This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Bitrefill. Bitrefill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. Visit bitrefill.com for more information. Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is Kathleen Lowe, co-founder of Bordr. Bordr tags itself as your trusted partner in Portugal, and they help with different aspects of paperwork and residency in Portugal. Kathleen, how's it going?
Hey, Vance. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us. I heard about Bordr just from talking to buddies who were interested in Portugal, and someone said, "Yeah, I might go with Bordr." And I said,
Mhm.
"What is Bordr?" And so I looked it up, and I was like, "Wow, this is awesome!" Kind of bringing a Silicon Valley flair to the residency space. It seems like you guys were kind of more software forward and kind of brought like a startup approach to
Mhm.
building a business in this space, which I thought was cool. So I'm happy we got the chance to connect.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm glad that you found us through that. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, where should we start? I know we want to talk a little bit about your personal experience moving from the Bay Area to Portugal,
Mhm.
and then we want to talk about Bordr as a company, what it was like building it, and then towards the end, maybe like what services you offer in case everyone's interested. But yeah, I mean, I would love to hear, just to kick it off, a little just like light question, like what was your personal story like moving from the Bay Area to Europe, to Portugal?
For sure, for sure. Yeah. So I will say we because I co-founded Bordr with my husband Richard, and we moved to Portugal together. And actually, we used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area. In terms of background, we both worked in tech, and then in 2016 we quit our jobs and started a business together. Started working together. We actually started with a web design agency, and after running that business for about a year and a half, we realized that we didn't really meet any of our clients in person. And so we figured we would take the opportunity to travel and work. And that kicked off our digital nomad journey. So we were nomadic for a little over 2 years, hopping around, living in cities from about 1 month to 3 months.
Mhm.
Um, we did spend time in South America, actually. We spent some time in Medellin in 2019. But yeah, we kind of have some time around Southeast Asia, some time in Europe, some time in South America as well. And then coming up on our third year, we really loved the travel, but also found that it was pretty challenging to, not have a base. So when there were times that, we wanted to spend longer amounts of time because we were always on a tourist visa, we had to, hop from one place to another. So
Mhm.
that's when we started looking into our options for a longer term base. And that's when the Portugal D7 visa came up. So this was late 2019. We heard about the Portugal D7 visa. And when we looked into it personally, we were like, oh, this is a great deal. But we could use our web design income at the time, because the main requirement was that you had income coming from outside, like your own income from outside of Portugal. And there was a path to citizenship in 5 years. It would allow us to explore more of Europe because as Americans, we were always limited by the Schengen tourist visa or like tourist thing of 90 days in, 90 days out. So it would be a great base to explore that part of the world. And so we decided to apply. So that started, I guess, our personal journey or our first taste of Portuguese bureaucracy. But we applied for the visa ourselves. We ended up moving to Portugal in 2020 and ended up getting locked down, as everyone else did in the rest of the world. But yeah, we ended up getting our residence in mid 2020 and starting Bordr a few months later. Yeah, a few, like maybe like half a year later. And so now it fast forward to 2023. We've been operating Bordr for over 3 years now. Um,
Wow.
and we can get into more detail, I guess. Like Bordr was born out of our personal experience. So basically, when we went through the process, it started with the process of getting a tax ID, and when we had to do it ourselves, it was really manual. Like we went on Facebook groups, and we were trying to figure out,
Those are
how do you do
helpful.
this? Yeah, they are. But there was also I guess at the time, so this was 2020. We need to get a tax ID, and we went on Facebook groups, and people would say like, "Oh, DM me, email this person." So we had talked to like a handful of people, and we got price quotes from 200 euros to 1,000 euros, and we were like, how is this number, the NIF, or the Portugal tax ID, is something that everyone who moves to Portugal needs. And so we were like, why isn't there just like a straightforward place where we can get one? And that's how Bordr started. So after we did all our paperwork and got residency and all that, this was like maybe like 6 months later, where we were like, hey, that tax number? We should just work with, because of our background in tech, we were like, oh, we can easily put up a website. We should be able to collect payment. We can handle the customer support. And then we'll work with Portuguese professionals, like a Portuguese lawyer, to actually fulfill the service, and just make it easy for people, because that's what we wish that existed at the time that we were trying to get it. So that's how Bordr was born. And so, yeah, I guess that kind of combines like our personal experience bleeding into how Bordr got started.
So your first product was the NIF, the tax ID.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
How long did you guys just do the NIF for?
So we launched the NIF. We offered that for a few months, and then we got a lot of requests from people saying, okay, now you got me the NIF. Thank you. That was fantastic. Can you help me open a bank account? Rules were changing at the time, where consulates and VFS, when you were applying for residence visas, they were starting to require bank accounts. When we applied, we didn't need to get a bank account for the visa application, but they were getting stricter, and suddenly you needed to have a Portuguese bank account along with, like, when you submit your visa application. And this was during COVID, when people couldn't fly, to come to, people historically would come to
Physically open
Portugal.
the bank account.
Yeah, do a scouting trip. Opening bank accounts in Portugal are not as easy as the US, where like in the US, you can just like go online, set up a bank account, is like no problem. Here, they're a lot stricter. Oftentimes they would want you to appear physically. So because we got a lot of requests, we naively were like, yeah, it can't be that hard. And that's what kind of, we started going down that hole, and thankfully we were able to figure it out with some heartache and some pain. But that was our second service. So we started offering bank accounts just a few months after, because there was so much, there was a great need for it.
That's a much more complicated service to offer, I feel, because of a lot of the reasons you mentioned. And so at this point in time,
Mm-hmm.
are you able to open a bank account for someone remotely
Mm-hmm.
without them physically going to Portugal?
Yep, absolutely. So ever since we launched the service, so that was the whole need, like the ability to set up a Portuguese bank account remotely. So we figured out how to do that, and we work with multiple branches of a bank in Portugal, of the biggest bank in Portugal. And we basically facilitate that process. So we work directly with a bank. We facilitate the signing of your documents with a Portuguese lawyer, and coordinate that whole thing, so that, wherever you are in the world, whether most people are still in their home country or maybe they're traveling, they can get that set up.
Interesting. That must have been quite a process to set it up with the biggest bank in Portugal. I thought you might have had to use like some kind of small, nimble bank or something. So you went probably the more bureaucratic route, but I guess ultimately people also want to have, a stable big bank. So tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about that. Like, how did that come about? Did you have to speak to a bunch of banks and some of them said no, and then someone finally agreed to work with some crafty Silicon Valley entrepreneurs and engineers?
Well, it was exactly that. We must have talked to, actually, it was me personally. I have probably talked to every single bank in Portugal trying to get this set up back when we started the business.
Hmm.
So yes, we did get a lot of no's, a lot of no's, and we almost gave up. But we were able to figure it out eventually. And then it kind of just grew from there. One thing that we've learned in working in Portugal is that sometimes you just have to be really persistent because things can vary based on maybe like who you're talking to, the time of day, or the mood. But yeah, we basically got a lot of like people saying, "Oh, you can't do that. Like that's illegal," or like, "Oh, that's like definitely not possible." People at the same bank, but like talking to different branches.
Classic.
So yeah, and I say that that's probably not unique to Portugal, but maybe in a lot of, you probably experience that a lot in Latin America as well.
Yes. Yes. A lot of conflicting information out there. That's why they come to us, My Latin Life, because we give them
Mhm.
the real goods.
For sure.
And tell me a bit about introducing software elements to it, because as I'm sure you're aware, like in this space of anything to do with, I guess, I mean, there's a lot of overlapping spaces here, right? But residency and offshore and bank accounts and I guess like foreign government paperwork services, tax
Mhm.
IDs, this and that. It's all very high touch and it's all very boutique. And in my opinion, it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. And it could be a lot more automated than it is. I'm sure you guys
Mhm.
probably drew a lot of inspiration from Peter Levels and what he's doing with what's his called again. But you know who Peter Levels is, right? Levels IO,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, the founder of Nomad List.
Nomad List guy. And he's doing something with Portugal as well.
Rebase,
Rebase,
if
that's
I'm
what
not
it's called.
mistaken.
Yes, yes, yes.
Mhm.
Rebase. Was Rebase an inspiration for what you guys are doing? You guys have might
We
even have been first.
Yeah, yeah. We came out with Bordr before Rebase. Um, so we are familiar with Peter Levels and primarily Nomad List because we were nomads ourselves once upon a time, and we did use Nomad List as we were, looking for cities to go to, and that it was a great discovery tool. But independently setting up Bordr, that was mainly drawing from our own personal experience of running our web design agency actually, and turning something that's, I'd say, more often than not pretty manual, like web design, like going back and forth
Hmm.
um, with clients, or for example like finding new projects. We had, with our web design agency, it was tech enabled in a lot of ways. So we had our own internal systems for project management, for collecting feedback. We had productized our services, so that people didn't have to get custom quotes, which was the norm at the time. This was back in 2016.
Hmm.
And so we took a lot of those lessons and applied it to Bordr. So for instance, like getting the NIF, certain things that we took from that were that we were upfront about pricing. Like, you didn't have to contact us to get pricing versus a lot of lawyers, like you'd have to like schedule a consultation or
Right. Just to
or
know how
like
much it costs.
exactly. We were like, it's a flat, it's a fixed price. It's on our website. You can check out. We enable, you can pay with a credit card. You don't need to do a bank transfer. Because a lot of people, are based in the US. Like, it was mostly foreigners who are purchasing our services. So then it would be way easier if they can just use the credit card in their country.
Hmm.
And then of course, like having a website and having like,
Like a FAQ.
yeah, like having FAQs, having like just like being very transparent about the process, the requirements, any questions that people had. So I think those are like the lessons or the aspects that we took in setting up the initial service. And then since launching, so we started with NIFs and then bank accounts, and now we've gotten into visas, taxes, and so we're applying those same lessons in terms of like using technology where it makes sense and where it can improve the customer experience and just make it more streamlined for everyone.
I imagine at the beginning it was a little bit more manual, where maybe you had a buy now button, but the back end was probably a lot more manual, and I'm sure you've made efforts to automate it over time.
Absolutely, yeah. So it was exactly that. The first few orders, yeah, we would collect the intake with an online form, but then everything was done manually, and then over time, we've then built processes, automated parts of it, have like more sophisticated tooling to make it faster, or to make the whole process faster, and then to make processing faster on our end too.
And how much is the NIF? Is it only $150?
That's correct.
Wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So people are still finessing out there for like, who knows, $600, $1,000, like you said.
Yeah. And oftentimes those prices aren't publicized. If
Exactly.
you contact them and schedule a consultation, because that's what we experienced exactly. And we were like, it's a pretty straightforward thing. I mean, to get your NIF with Bordr, you basically complete payment, fill out a form, submit your documents, sign a power of attorney so that our lawyer can request the NIF on your behalf, and then you get the NIF within a week. It's pretty straightforward.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Language Blend, the new best way to learn Spanish. Language Blend focuses on what you actually need to live and get by abroad. With daily one-on-one lessons, a dedicated texting partner, it's like living in a Spanish-speaking country without ever leaving home. Go to languageblend.com for more information. That's incredible. One I had a question about is the Portuguese birth certificate, which you offer. Is that for people from Portugal, or is that something else?
Yeah, so the birth certificate is really just it's very secondary as a service. So there is this, it's mostly for Portuguese citizens who were born outside of Portugal.
Uh,
So basically, when you're requesting a NIF, if you are a Portuguese citizen, you need to provide your birth certificate. And when you're born abroad, you're like, even if you're born abroad and you may not have a copy of a birth certificate, your parents registered you. So there is a record of your birth. So yeah, that's mainly to help Portuguese citizens who don't have a copy of their birth certificate get one so that they can then request their NIF.
okay, gotcha. Because, yeah, we
Mhm.
don't really have that in the US or Canada. But yeah, I've heard of this in Italy, for example, where even if you're not born in that country, they can produce a birth certificate for you, which is kind of a mind F.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same situation.
Okay, interesting. So you do the NIF, bank account, D7 visa, digital nomad visa, and NHR tax consultation. The D7 and the digital nomad visa services are newer. When did you guys start offering visa services? Because that's probably a additional level of complexity.
Yeah. So the visa services were in pilot for a few months, and then we just went live with them earlier this month.
Earlier this month, I got you at a good
Mhm.
time.
Yeah. It's exciting. It's something that we've that's been cooking for a while, and it is also the result of many requests. The challenging thing with visa is that um, because visas are issued all over, like by consulates, or the initial processing at least is handled by consulates all around the world, there is quite a bit of variation between what's written in the law and what's done in practice. So, if you look at the Portugal immigration site, they have like the main
Hmm.
government site, it says like, to get a D7 visa or a digital nomad visa, here are the requirements. And it seems pretty straightforward. But in practice, when you actually go to apply, let's say in the US, you'll find that the list of requirements is much more extensive than what's seen on the government site. And this kind of, this one instance is the same like all around the world. So the big challenge with visas is being able to, stay on top of what's happening in every in every consulate, so that customers can be prepared to submit their application there. So today we support a limited number of countries so that we can really like focus and deliver a good service for those countries. So we support the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand.
Okay. Yeah, because I guess you're kind of onboarding people from one country at a time, sort of.
Yeah, well, we're servicing one country at a time. Yeah,
Hmm.
I guess if you think about it, it's like, oh, if we're helping people from the US apply, we need to then deeply understand the requirements of the US and the nuances. Like in the US alone, there are multiple consulates or VFS offices that process visa applications based on your state of residence. So understanding the nuances between those different offices so that we can help our customers prepare their application accordingly.
Okay, awesome. Tell me one more time the list of countries, people from countries that can apply and use Bordr to get their visas.
That's the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand.
Okay, well, that covers a good amount of our English speaking base, so that's good.
Yeah, that's primarily our audience.
Good. And you know what's interesting is that like a visa application is a much longer process in terms of a service to
Mhm.
provide, in terms of productizing a service, whereas the NIF, like you said, takes a week, bank account, same kind of thing, like it's a pretty fast feedback loop. But the
Mhm.
visa takes so many steps, right? It's like maybe they need their birth certificate or a police check, an appointment at the consulate, and all
Mhm.
these extra steps, right? Maybe they got to show up in Portugal and present themselves, and then I don't know, show up at like a municipal office, right? So there's all these steps. So what is it like creating a productized service for a multi-month process?
That's exactly right. If you go to our website and go to the visa page, you will see that it's 10 steps to move to Portugal versus NIF is like 3 easy steps and bank is like 5. But you are right in that it's a lot more drawn out. In terms of the visa service, I would say it is a lot more involved as a service. So we do guide you from the very beginning in terms of booking your visa appointment all the way until you receive your residence card in Portugal and need to, set up a few things like change your address and register for NHR, which is the tax program. That's kind of like it can be anywhere from a 4 to 6 to 8 month engagement, depending on how long it takes for the visa to get approved, which is also a moving target all the time. Like on average, visas are supposed to be approved within 1 to 2 months, but
Hmm.
then based on processing time and just like how things are going, that can go up to 3, 4 months. So that's a big variable there. But in terms of productizing the service, I would say it's more at this point, at like today, it's more of like processizing the service, if you will, which is like, being able, providing very explicit instructions,
Hmm.
using technology so that, our customers can see where they are at in the process at any given
That's
time.
cool. They get like a dashboard with like,
Mhm.
it's almost like a UPS delivery thing with like.
Well, yeah, we have a shared view where you can see all the requirements. You can see if it's to do, if it's in progress, if it's done, and then it links out to a secure file sharing system where you can always view what you've submitted, and then we work with our team to then check the documents that you submit, and once it's approved, you can also see that. So yeah, basically, kind of like having a more tech enabled process to the visa application.
That's incredible. I mean, I've definitely thought about this because I have a little bit of software development chops myself, but
Mhm.
I'm also a little lazy. But
It's a lot. It's a
it's
lot.
a lot. But like, do you think you guys are the only people with like a full dashboard for uploading the docs, seeing where your application is at, that kind of thing?
I mean, I'm not too sure. In terms of, so it's not custom built today. Today we kind of, like merge a bunch of like existing tools, but the idea is that we would want to integrate it into the app eventually. So today our app, we have a custom app that and as a software developer, you probably understand that things take longer than expected always. So our custom app supports like our NIFs, and then we hope to, and then we've been working on bringing in the bank accounts there. And then for the visa process today, we basically string together some existing tools, but basically simulating a custom experience. And I think that's where the design part comes, like the process design comes in, where given the constraints of not having custom app, like how do we make the experience very like usable.
And how is it updated when someone moves through the process? Like obviously if someone uploads their docs, it's kind of like yes, no, birth certificate uploaded. But what about the feedback from the steps with the Portuguese office where it's like like the lawyer has submitted, the Portuguese government has accepted. Like, is someone on your team, such as the lawyer or whatever, going in and manually, you know, clicking that this person has reached the next step in the process so that the user can see it, or how is the user getting that feedback once it's out of their hands to know that there's progress being made?
So in terms of, I guess, the bulk of the work is us working with the customers directly on their application. So like preparing the visa application. So they would upload documents, we would give feedback. That is, there's always a human element to that, and someone from our team will initiate that to get to provide the feedback. But in terms of the actual application process, the visa application is actually submitted by the applicant themselves. So whether that's directly to the consulate or at a VFS or through a VFS office, which is basically like a third party processor for the consulates, they would submit the visa application themselves, and then the consulate actually contacts the applicant directly. So that's
Okay,
the
so the
waiting
dashboard is
period.
more just the user knowing that they've uploaded all their requirements, and then from there, it's just like normal emails and stuff when progress
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, okay, okay. It would be cool to even have it somehow integrated so that almost like UPS, like when your package is out for delivery, or you know what I mean, like been delivered,
Yeah, if the Portuguese immigration office
had an API.
had an API and would give us access to it, then that would be amazing. When the day comes, then that would be, we would definitely add that on.
Well, if you guys want to build an API for governments to do that, I mean, that could be profitable. What do you guys use, by the way, on the back end for Border? Like, what's
um,
the tech stack?
you will have to talk to my co-founder Richard about
Is it
that.
proprietary, or literally he's just the guy?
So we no, we have a team. So we do use a combination, as I said earlier. So we have a custom app, and we have like engineers who work on that, and then separately for like new services, we do use no code solutions. So a bunch of like existing tools, and then we string them
Like
together with
Airtable and
automations.
stuff.
Airtable, N8N, Paperform, Box. So yeah, we use a handful of existing tools.
Okay, so it's not like a true web app backend with like Node or Python or something.
The custom app is.
The custom app is,
Mhm.
and that's the mobile app.
It works on both mobile and web.
Okay, because I was looking for, let's talk a bit about that because I was looking for the mobile app. Maybe it's just not available for Android, or what's it called?
Ah, so it's mobile web. So it's a web app that is mobile optimized. So
Okay.
if you go to our website,
Yeah.
there is in the upper right corner, upper right hand corner, there's a button to log in. And so it's
Yep.
app.bordr.com. And
Uh-huh.
that's where you can place orders for your NIF. And that's the custom experience, or that's a custom app rather.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to sign up right now. Up.border.com. Guys, there's going to be a affiliate link in the bio or in the description to this podcast. So anyone will be able to ideally use my affiliate link so I can get a little sum as you
Yeah.
guys sign up for Border.
And you also get $10 off any of our services.
Boom. Love it. That's really cool. So how many visas have you guys processed so far with the D7 and with the digital nomad visa? Interesting that you guys launched both at the same time.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about the visas is that the D7 visa used to be the catch all. So, like back when we applied in 2020, as I was mentioning earlier, the D7 visa was basically the visa for anyone who had their own income. So, if you were a retiree who had pension income, if you were an entrepreneur who had self employment income, or if you were like a religious leader who had your own income, everyone would apply on the D7. Now, in late 2022, so late last year, the government came out with a digital nomad visa trying to make or with the intention to separate passive income from active income. So now the D7 is targeted towards anyone with passive income.
Mm.
So, mainly retirees or people with like rental income, while the digital nomad visa is designed for employed and self employed people. So, whether you're a remote worker or if you have your own company. And so, the reason that we launched both at the same time is because if you have the intention of moving to Portugal, where before everyone could just apply for the D7, now you have this other visa type, and the requirements are very similar, and the process is almost identical as well. But yeah, basically the difference is active income versus passive income, and the digital nomad visa has a higher income requirement compared to the D7.
Huh. But I imagine that the digital nomad visa isn't going to really lead to citizenship if that or permanent residency if that's something people are interested in. Or maybe it does, but they're going to have to switch their visa type at some point. But I think you can go straight from D7 to PR and citizenship.
So for the digital nomad visa, there are actually two types. So you have the temporary one and the residence one. So
Oh,
the service that we offer is assistance with the digital nomad visa, which is the residence type. So just like the D7, it also has a path to permanent residence and citizenship. 5 years. So everything, as I mentioned, is like pretty much the same. The main difference is the monthly income requirement. So for the D7 visa, for the main applicant, you basically need to demonstrate monthly income that's equivalent to the Portuguese minimum wage. So for 2023, that's 760 euros per month. But for the
that's all you
digital
need for
nomad,
passive income.
yeah, for the
Wow.
D7.
Wow.
And then the digital nomad visa is 4 times the minimum wage. So that brings you up to like a little over 3,000 euros per month.
Incredible. And what does that look like in terms of what's the original duration of the visa and then the renewal process?
So when you're issued the visa, so D7 digital nomad, it's the same. Like as I said, the digital nomad residence visa. So I'll just speak about them, like speak about it together. But once you're issued the visa, that visa is valid for 4 months. So within that 4 month period, you need to enter Portugal on the visa, and then along with the visa, they give you an appointment with CEF, which is the immigration office here in Portugal. And when you attend that appointment here in Portugal, that's what you basically like convert your visa into a residence card. So after attending the appointment, you submit some documents, and then you receive your residence card in the mail. At that point, you have a temporary residence in Portugal. So that initial card is valid for 2 years, and then you renew that card, and then it's valid for 3 years. And then at that point, it's been 5 years, and then you can apply for citizenship or PR.
So both PR and citizenship are after 5 years total residency.
Correct.
Hey guys, quick interruption to tell you about Bitrefill. Bitrefill is the best way to convert your crypto into gift card balances. These are gift cards that you can spend at hotels.com, Airbnb, Nike, and many more. You may remember Joel Valenzuela, previous podcast guest. He's been living on crypto exclusively since 2015, and he's a big consumer of Bitrefill. And so I asked Joel, I said, what do you like most about Bitrefill? He said that he likes the instant delivery, the precise amounts so that you don't have to juggle a lot of gift cards, and he loves the global selection. Nobody else has this much selection of gift cards, over 10,000 gift card options across hundreds of countries. Go to bitrefill.com to sign up, and you can also use the code MyLatinLife for 10% back off your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information. Okay, cool. And you guys help with the renewal as well?
So the renewal is done online. So yeah, we do share instructions on how to do that. It's actually super straightforward. So there really isn't much to be done there. Yeah, you'll find that one thing that we've learned through the process of working in Portugal in this type of space as well, is that a lot of things can't there are oftentimes there are things that are just easier done by following a set of instructions. For example, applying for NHR. I'm not sure if you experienced this personally, but back when we were applying for NHR, it just wasn't clear. It was very difficult to figure out how to actually do it. I was getting conflicting information about people saying oh, you just go on Portal das Finanças and check a box and then it's all good. And then you talk, but then on the other hand, you talk to some I talked to an accountant, some tax experts, and they're oh, pay me this many hundred euros. I'll do it for you because you don't want to mess it up. You don't want to lose the 10-year benefit and all that. Turns out it really is just as simple as logging into Portal das Finanças and ticking a box.
This is for the renewal?
So today you can find on our website, we have a step-by-step guide on how to apply for NHR on the website, which walks you through every single step so that you can go do it yourself, because you were there's no way that people should be charging for this. So
for the NHR.
Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, I guess the point there was similar to the renewals. When renewing your residence card, it is as simple as just logging in, confirming your address, and then you should receive your residence card in the mail a couple weeks after. We just renewed our residence card a few months ago, and that was the process. So yeah, for anyone who's going through or about to go through the process, it is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I may have used a firm in the past to do the NHR, and it was honestly a headache, just more than anything, getting them to respond and stuff.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, I would say that responding to emails at all is surprisingly, people are oh my gosh, you responded to my email, thank you. But coming from I'd say that is a big thing that sets us apart too, is the fact that we are from the US, so we offer US level customer support. And that's that's pretty hard to come by in Portugal, and I think that's probably just mainly because of it's just a different standard. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so if someone wanted the NHR, I know you don't want to get too much in detail because it might not exist a year from now, and we want to make this episode evergreen. But the idea is that if you have the D7 or maybe the digital nomad visa, you can sort of layer that on top. You can layer the NHR on top of your existing visa.
So the idea is that NHR, yeah, just to not go into it too deeply, but to give you kind of an overview, NHR is Portugal's tax program that basically was designed to attract foreigners or returning residents. The you can qualify for NHR if you haven't been a resident in Portugal for the past 5 years. So that's why foreigners who have recently moved to Portugal on let's say a D7 digital nomad visa are eligible for NHR. And so once you receive your visa and you've moved to Portugal, well, after you receive your visa, move to Portugal and get your residence card, then you will be able to update your address to a Portuguese address. And then once you've established, and that's what establishes you as a tax resident in Portugal. And once you've done that, then you can apply for NHR. And NHR today, we don't know if that's going to change soon, but today it's a 10-year benefit. So whatever the tax rates are. So for example, there's like a flat 10% tax rate on pensions, a flat 20% tax rate on like highly qualified professions. Basically, you get that benefit for 10 years. And that's what like signing up, or that's what getting NHR means.
Mm-hmm. And so it's something that people can apply for once they have the D7, or it's like additional to the D7?
So once, so once you have the visa, and after you get the visa, then you get your residence card. And once you have your residence card, you just have to follow a few steps, and then you can apply for NHR.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Cool. And so, and back to the D7 versus the digital nomad visa, you mentioned that they were very similar, but there were some small differences. What are those? What differences are there other than the income requirements, if any?
So the income requirement is the main one. And then I would say that it depends on the country that you're applying through, but sometimes the requirements can be different. Like maybe in some countries for the digital nomad visa, a Portuguese bank account may not be required, versus for the D7, it will be required. In some instances, for the digital nomad visa, you also may not need a long-term lease, whereas for the D7, you will need one. So the main differences are in the income requirements and sometimes just like a few line items for the actual requirements for the visa application.
Okay, so having a lease or an address in Portugal is a big one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that does vary again based on the country that you're applying through. So I guess to make that more concrete, like in the U.S., for instance, both the D7 and digital nomad requirements are pretty much identical. So whether you're applying for the digital nomad visa or the D7 in the U.S., for like the three big VFS offices, which process most of the states, you would need to show a bank account, a lease, for both visas. So the main thing, like why you would apply for one over the other, is basically like your employment status, and then
Mhm.
that determines how much income you need to demonstrate.
Okay, cool. And I know that even where you apply in Portugal can make a difference as well, if I'm not mistaken. Like sometimes in Lisbon versus in some of the smaller cities, they have different requirements regarding if you need a lease and this kind of thing.
That would be for the self appointment. So yeah, after you apply for your visa, so you always apply for your visa in your home country, and then once you get the visa and you come to Portugal, you're assigned a self appointment, which that appointment is the one that's done in country, so in Portugal. And yeah, you're basically assigned an office, a date, and a time. And it's very difficult to change, so you want to show up for it and attend it. Otherwise, it's hard to get in another one. But yeah, there are some differences there. So similar to the consulate situation around the world, here in Portugal, when you attend your self appointment, there can be some differences as well. Like some offices may want you to bring these documents, and some offices are lax about this requirement. So generally speaking, for our customers, when we do prepare them for their self appointments, we basically take a more conservative stance and have you like prepare the most conservative list, like just have the documents, any document that you may be asked for, ready. so that in the event that you do get asked for it, you're well prepared.
Okay, interesting. Okay, I don't want to get in the weeds too much,
Yeah.
but I did notice that just things were sometimes different in Lisbon versus other places. So just something to keep in mind, I guess.
Hmm.
Cool, cool. And then you guys help with the driver's license too, right?
Driver's
Or no?
license? No, we don't.
Okay. I noticed they changed the law like a year ago to recognize American driver's license, so it's like almost unnecessary now. I'm not sure if you
Oh,
knew
I'm
about
not
that.
I'm not familiar. I personally went through the driver's license exchange. Um, so yeah, and we started processing ours last year. So at least at that time, we did need to exchange the license because we couldn't just use our American license to drive here after a certain number of months of being a resident in Portugal. But I'm not sure if that's changed because that isn't something that we actively help with.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I'm pretty sure that just last year I want to say like, maybe like July, August 2022, they started recognizing American driver's licenses like full time in Portugal. And I
Oh.
guess by extension in Europe, if you're a Portuguese resident. So there would be no need to make that exchange because I was looking into it, and it's another one of those Facebook group things where people were just waiting like so long. I forget if they were waiting for the appointment or just to get the swap or to get the license in the mail. But some people, and it was a bit of maybe a COVID thing, but people were like, I've been waiting like over a year for my driver's license type stuff.
Oh wow. Yeah, ours took almost a year to process as well.
No way.
Hmm. Thankfully, there wasn't much active work. It was just a lot of waiting.
Well, speaking of waiting, tell me a little bit about how your personal experience has been just, moving to Portugal and getting out of the Bay Area, getting away from a lot of the problems there and, being in a new country. Like, I'm sure, did it give you like a new, fresh breath of air on life? And are you guys happy with your decision? Where do you live in Portugal, by the way?
We're based in Lisbon.
In Lisbon.
So
Okay.
yeah, we had been, so it wasn't as, like stark of a contrast because coming from the Bay Area, we were nomadic for 2 years. So we had been traveling a lot already. And that period in our life was a lot of fun and we really did enjoy it. After that 2 year period, we were pretty much set on living, or like we were very open to living outside of the United States. And then moving to Portugal after being nomadic for 2 years was really nice to finally have like a place where we could feel settled for some time and not, have to think about the next place after 3 months, and be planning for that. Although the timing was interesting because we moved here right before COVID, or like just a month before COVID. So that was definitely an interesting time to be in a new country and
Hmm.
see Portugal in a very quiet state, and be in our apartment most of the time and primarily experience grocery stores and other essential services. But that went on for about like, maybe a good 4 or 5 months. And then after that, we ended up, hello?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I got a notification that that it disconnected real quick. But anyway, we spent kind of like the first, I'd say about first close to 2 years hopping, like exploring Portugal. So we've spent time in Lisbon and Porto in the Algarve on the Silver Coast. We were trying to get a sense of like where we wanted to get a long-term lease here.
Right.
And I think the nomad in us was also like afraid to commit and sign a long-term lease in some regard. But yeah, we eventually decided to call Lisbon home, and so we've been here for like, I guess, in our apartment in Lisbon for some time, and we really like it. Living in Portugal is really comfortable. There are a lot of things that remind us of California: the weather, the produce, the bridge. um, the
It's
people are
true.
really
The
warm.
hills.
Sorry, the hills, yeah. um, the people are really warm, so it's been a very easy adjustment. People are super friendly, really accommodating. Yeah, the English level is also really good in Portugal, as you've probably experienced. So that definitely helps. Yeah, we've been enjoying it, and then Lisbon has also become really popular in the past few years. So we've had a lot of friends come through and visit.
Yeah, you
Of course,
definitely caught a
that's
wave.
always
You
nice.
definitely caught a wave. I've seen tons of those CNBC type articles saying, Americans moving to Portugal, right?
Yeah, yeah. At some point, yeah, it felt like everyone was moving to Portugal. You know that it's like becoming mainstream when your mom starts sending you articles saying like, oh, or says like, oh, so and so friend is thinking of moving to Portugal. I sent her your website.
Mhm. Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. Quick break from the podcast to tell you about Language Blend, the best new way to learn Spanish. Language Blend was co founded by Jake Nomada, friend of the podcast, decade of experience in Latin America. And Jake and his team, they put everything into this program that they wish they had in terms of how to level up quickly with your Spanish language skills. Because the faster that you can get conversationally fluent in Spanish, the better the experience that you're going to have in Latin America. So go to languageblend.com for more information. And what's that been like? Like, connecting with Americans in Portugal. Have you experienced any um, tension from the locals? Just to stir up a little drama in the podcast. Like, have you experienced that a bit?
Sorry to not give you much drama, but thankfully, no, we actually haven't had any experiences like that, where there has been pushback. Personally, at least, I'd say that for at least from my personal experience, people have been very welcoming.
That's awesome. And is your squad, like your group of friends in Portugal, a lot of Americans, probably pretty international, I'm guessing?
Yeah, there are a lot of international folks. Border has connected us to a lot of people as well, so that's been a lot of fun. Um, yeah, I'd say that they're also, being based in Lisbon. It's a very like international city too.
Mhm.
So yeah, we get a good mix of people over here.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of the main cities that Americans will visit on vacation. You know what I mean? Like if you were in, I don't know, Berlin or Milan, you wouldn't get as many people visiting you. But
Hmm. Well,
in
yeah,
Lisbon, like
they're.
a lot of people visit just on vacation or a wedding or who knows.
For sure, for sure. And I mean, it's like an easy flight from New York to Lisbon. You have
Yep.
direct flights, 6, 7 hours, easy. We just had some of Richard's college friends visiting for the weekend. So yeah, it's a lot of good fun.
Yep. Yep. Direct flights from Boston.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the best bases still in Europe. Have you seen the prices go up like a lot in Portugal, or is it not too bad? Because there's been a lot of talk about how rent has like doubled and this and that.
That's what I was gonna say. Rent prices have definitely gone up, even in the few years that we've lived here. And compare, like I guess if you zoom out even more, that I guess that's where a lot of complaints are. So, going back to what I was saying earlier, like I haven't personally felt any like animosity directly or personally, but there are quite some, or I guess there's like there seems to be a sentiment around like for like prices going up, especially in the major cities like Lisbon and Porto, because in the past like 5 to 10 years, like rents have just like skyrocketed. Um, and a contributor to that is the influx of foreigners, and then I think just like the general lack of supply and new housing development in the cities. So that is a challenge. But yeah, I'd say that in terms of cost of living, the cost of rent has gone up quite a bit. um normal like day-to-day things, I'd say, are pretty steady, and it's like quite affordable. But yeah, rent in Lisbon and Porto has gone a little bit has gone a little bit crazy
What
in
would
the
people
past
expect
year or
to pay
so.
right now if they're listening to this, they want to move to Portugal? What would they expect to pay in Lisbon rent?
I can speak to Lisbon. I would say that in Lisbon, for a one bedroom apartment, you're looking at close to like 1,500 euros.
Okay.
And then for a two bedroom, yeah, for like a two bedroom apartment, it's like in the 2,000 to 3,000. I mean, you can go as high as you want. But yeah, somewhere within like maybe the 2,000 2,500 range.
Okay, cool. Got it. Got it.
Mhm.
Have you ever been back to the Bay Area recently, SF, and like been like, wow, SF is crazy expensive compared to Portugal?
No, not recently. Not recently. We haven't been back. We haven't been back in the Bay for a while.
Wow.
Have you been recently?
I've been to the US and North America. I haven't been to the Bay in like maybe year and a half, 2 years.
Oh, okay, okay. The last time we were there, I think, was maybe closer to 4 years ago. Definitely pre-COVID.
Damn, you left it behind.
Well, the thing is, neither of us have family back there. We do have some dear, like some really good friends who we would love to visit. But yeah, COVID made that complicated, and then we had a baby last year, so that's also
Oh,
been
congrats.
it's been a little bit more challenging to
Little
travel.
Portuguese baby.
Yeah, yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about that experience? I'd honestly be super interested.
Oh, absolutely. It was, of course, we were like a little bit nervous in terms of like navigating the system in a foreign country. We're also first time parents, so a lot of firsts. But what ended up being really helpful was we ended up working with a doula, who really helped us navigate the whole system. So she helped us navigate. We started working with her like 5 months prior to delivering the baby, so she helped us like prepare for the actual birth, as well as like navigate the Portuguese system in terms of like helping us pick doctors, helping us pick which hospital to deliver at, and like figure out our pediatrician. So it was like having like a trusted friend, and that made all the difference. So overall, we had a really pleasant experience.
Cool. And did you go to one of the big hospitals?
Yeah, I would say it's a big hospital. We're in Lisbon, so yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. And all good with like the language barrier, with the bureaucracy, etc.
Yeah. It was a really well, the doula was there during the birth. So yeah, I mean that was one of our biggest fears. We were like, we know some Portuguese, but definitely not enough Portuguese in a hospital setting. So the doula was there to like help us get checked in during labor. She was actually there during the majority of the labor. So, talking to the nurses and getting us set up, so that neither me nor Richard had to worry about that, because there's already a lot going on as is. So yeah, I'd say that for anyone who is considering or thinking about giving birth in Portugal or in any foreign country, I would highly recommend looking into to working with a doula. She's basically like your
A
advocate and someone like
midwife.
on your team or on your side when you're going through the whole experience.
So, Kathleen, tell me a little bit about the future of Bordr and where you're looking to take this, and I guess maybe wrap that in with your personal journey for you and your co-founder in terms of your lives as expats.
Yeah. So in terms of the future of Bordr, we are continuing to expand our services. So we just went live with our visa services, which is super exciting. We had piloted Portuguese tax filing last year. So next year, so 2023, we're excited to launch that publicly and make that available. That is always a challenge when moving to a new country, trying to navigate like how to file taxes and get that sorted. So we are going to be offering that as a service as well. And basically, the idea is that, we want to continue to provide value and help people in what they need help with, navigate it. Like, I guess we've already covered like moving to Portugal. So now we're getting into services related to like living in Portugal and taking care of things in country. So yeah, filing your taxes, purchasing real estate, getting a will figured out. Those are a few things that are kind of like on the roadmap and things that we would like to help people with.
That's
And
awesome.
then,
That sounds amazing.
personally, Portugal is home. Is home now. Now, I won't say forever. Given our track record of being nomadic. But yeah, we're enjoying it here, and we can, we'll continue to be around. So if you end up coming through Portugal, definitely drop me a line.
Amazing. And as I mentioned before, the link to all the services are going to be in the show notes. And Bordr sounds like an excellent solution. Probably the best company that does what they do in terms of straightforward, transparent pricing, all that stuff. So, yeah, really, really impressed by everything that you guys are doing.
Thanks, fans. Thanks again for having me.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, my guest today, Kathleen Lowe, co-founder of Bordr. Thank you so much to Kathleen for doing this, and thank you to the audience for listening.